Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another Distro Wars. And today we want to have a look at Ubuntu Desktop Pack versus ZorinOS. First, what is Ubuntu Desktop Pack? And I've actually never seen this until they showed up with a new release version on DistroWars the other day. And I thought, let's have a look at that. Well, Ubuntu Pack is a Ubuntu build where they're going to do a lot of things to make it further more user-friendly. So if you are just switching to Linux the first time, this might be the option that you go to. It is going to be, from what I can tell, I've played around with 3 of these. They're less dependent on snaps. Everything is still kind of the setup. They just didn't, the versions I tested anyway, they didn't preload the system with a lot of them. And they have a variety of desktop environments. They are still going to do the data ping, which we'll get into that in a bit here. But the website itself is at ualinux.com. One of the cool things about them is if you're not quite confident about burning a ISO image or you are on a seriously low bandwidth, you can actually buy a DVD or a USB directly from them. And if you're going to buy a USB drive from somebody for your distribution, you would always want to prefer to buy it directly from the manufacturers of the distro. There are a lot of people selling those online that could be full of malware, so you got to be very careful. So when I see an organization like this that offers the sale of their installation medium, this is an excellent thing because it gives you more options. Of course, you can download it. So they say here, what's the difference between the Ubuntu Pack and the original? Well, they actually really didn't give us a lot more information here other than desktop environments. So let me break it down to you like this. First, you have a variety of desktop environments, but you have to download them all individually. They even have more desktop environments than the official Ubuntu flavors do. So they have the Cinnamon, and I'm not sure if Ubuntu Cinnamon grabbed their theme from UA Linux, or if UA Linux grabbed it from there. I presume that Ubuntu Cinnamon probably grabbed it from these guys, but I don't know for sure. They also have Unity, so if you want to run a modern version of Ubuntu with Unity, they have that, and it actually works well. They have a standard GNOME build. They have the Budgie, the Deepin desktop. They have a flashback GNOME, a classic GNOME. They have a Windows-style, Windows-like GNOME, which I did not play with that one. They have Cinnamon. That's the one we're looking at today. They have KDE, Mate, LXQT, XFCE. Like, wow. They have a lot of choices for desktop environments. Downside is you gotta download the one that you want. So it's not like a net installer where you download one file and you choose what you want to have. They also, though, they don't mention it necessarily here, but they also have a whole lot of software pre-installed that some people are going to call bloat, and some people are going to say, that's exactly what I wanted. So they're going to come pre-installed. I think Zoom is on there. I think I saw Skype on there. I think Spotify might be on there. We'll show you what it is. It's a lot of things. The other thing they do have that might be of interest to you Windows users coming over, they have VeraCrypt already set up and installed. And so if you are already relying on and have VeraCrypt installed drives, it already is going to be compatible with VeraCrypt out of the box. The downside for me, it also has Play on Linux, and that means that it can run Windows applications, which I'm never an advocate of pre-installing that on the system. I would love better a tool to say, if you need to run Windows applications, load that here. I would much rather see that because you're going to allow the system to run Windows applications if Play on Linux is there, albeit it may be sandboxed or whatever else, but still, it's a potential risk. That's not a huge deal breaker, but it is what it is. So that is the Ubuntu Desktop Pack. Zorin, this one here is a build that is, again, also targeted towards new users. They have free versions and they have paid versions. The paid versions are going to get you more themes. They're going to get you more applications. A lot of those are applications you can easily install. A few of them are a little bit harder to get or install. They do have 2 versions. They have the standard. The ultimate one's the paid one here, which you can see is $40. They have the Core Essentials, which is basically the pure free version. You can download that one for free. And it's just going to be run on a very highly modified GNOME. It's so modified that it actually has a lot of benefits to it for the new user. easier theming, and in one installation you can choose a Windows type style, a Mac type style, or something in between. They also though have for older computers, if you have an older computer you want to try Linux on, the Zorin 15.3 Lite, this guy here is based on XFCE, is going to be a little bit lower powered, but really it doesn't have all of the same theming options, but it actually gets you pretty stinking close. You'd have a hard time telling which one's which. There are the education editions as well, and they give you some information here. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and mention this for completion one time at the very beginning, and we're not going to comment on it anymore because it's the controversial part, data collection type stuff. Neither one of these collects data that I would consider to be seriously bad, but it's always is important to talk about the data that is collected all the same. So Zorin actually was silently doing this for a period of time, but when it was brought into light by people in the Linux community, then they actually changed this around and made this an opt-in feature. So now on the installer, and both of these use the same Ubuntu installer, so the installation is the same, but there is a check mark on Ubuntu, or excuse me, on Zorin for opting into this data collection. If you opt into it, then all they're going to grab is they are going to grab a unique machine identifier. The thing I do not like about it is because it is static to your individual machine. It tells the version, the number of users on the system, when it was created, and when it was last updated. That, to some people, is going to be a little bit intrusive. I don't consider this the end of the world, but if I were using Zorin, I would disable it. That's all it collects, not really anything there. Ubuntu, they have a couple of things. When you first install Ubuntu, you can send them the copy of your system, or you cannot send them that information. My big critical point of this is if you say no, then they still will ping the server. They are saying they're not collecting the IP address, just counting the installations. And I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. Still, I would prefer they wouldn't do that. But this is basically a copy of the report. It tells you the architecture, it tells you the resolutions, the frequency of your monitor, the desktop environment, the types, the time zones, things like this. The downside, again, that I see this from a pure privacy standpoint is that this is a system fingerprint, and there are some very rare people in the population that is kind of a no deal. But nevertheless, that's not actually bad. So you can turn this off. Of course, you can block that by not having an internet connection on startup. They do have the application called Popularity Contest, but the latest versions of Ubuntu no longer is shipping with this. It has not been enabled by default. I don't think it's ever been enabled by default. Maybe it was at one point in time a long time ago. They also have automated bug reporting, which you can turn off in the privacy settings. So those are the types of things we have. Nothing is really critical in either of these two distributions. But nevertheless, I just wanted to point them out for clarity that they are there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to log on in, and we are going to have a look at these. We're going to look at Ubuntu Desktop Pack running the Cinnamon version first, and then we are going to go ahead and have a look at Zorin. So here is the loading screen. You can see Ubuntu Pack from ualinux.com. Very nice little loading screen, and we'll come back on when this is ready to log in. All right, so here we are on the login screen. So it does look very nice here. We have options here. We have Cinnamon, we have Ubuntu, and we have Ubuntu on Wayland. So presumably you can go right on back into Ubuntu. I actually did not look into that earlier. So let's go ahead and look at that at the end of the demonstration of the Ubuntu software pack, or desktop pack, excuse me. So we get logged in, and we are going to see the same type of theming that we saw on the Ubuntu Cinnamon. It's not my favorite theming, but hey, it's Cinnamon. You can easily change it around. So here we are. We're logging in. We do have desktop icons, something that standard Ubuntu does not give us anymore. So that's an option. We still have this massive date, and I am not a fan of this type of theming. But nevertheless, that's what we have. Now, again, I'm not sure if these guys borrowed from the Ubuntu Cinnamon Remix, or if there's any relationship between the two, but the theming does appear to be, I think it's the same. If not the same, it definitely is similar. Now, since these guys here focus on a couple of mostly just user-friendly type things, that's what we're going to focus on. Of course, inside of your system settings, if you do not like the theming at all, that's actually easy to change inside of your themes. And I actually have an entire videos about how to manage the Cinnamon desktop environment, so I'm not going to go into that in any great detail here, but just kind of showing you what we're looking at here. So looks like we're using the Chemo Dark themes, Chemo themes. So that's boot up the old Ubuntu Cinnamon remix and see what they're doing. Everything else here is going to be very similar Ubuntu. Out of the box. It does do the asking you about the sending the data on first load, which is just fine. Everything else is going to be pretty much Ubuntu. We have the standard software updaters running in the background. You won't have any notification of it until it pops up on your screen and asks you to update. But where this one really stands out, in addition to having all of the different desktop environments you can choose from separately, is they do have a lot of applications installed. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of these guys. We do have, again, Play on Linux. That was the part that I wish they would not include that necessarily, but that's okay. We also have down here VeraCrypt is already set up, so that's actually good. They have the USB stick image writers and formatters. These are the tools I use all the time in Linux Mint that are excellent for writing and formatting USB drives. We have a lot of games pre-installed, so if you're not a big gamer, you're going to consider this a lot of bloat. If you're really new to Linux and wanting to see the full scope of what it is, this is good. So I'm not going to declare that good or bad. It's just kind of, it is what it is. We do have extra tools, like we have Inkscape and GIMP installed. We have a GUI for image magic. We have a lot of stuff in here. There's Skype. We have Viber. We have Zoom. We have Xpra. Inside of our Office, I believe this is going to come with LibreOffice 7, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure which version the updated Ubuntu is shipping with right now, but I'm pretty sure I saw in the documentation that that was LibreOffice 7. As soon as we see the loading screen, we'll tell you for sure. All right, so over here we have Brassario, we have GVC View, Rhythmbox, Sound Juicer, VLC. So a lot of stuff. Here's our administration. There's BleachBit running as administrator. Yes, that is Office 2007. Wow, not 2000. Wow, my brain stopped working. That is LibreOffice version 7. Here we are, some firmware stuff. We got a lot of different tools there. Here's your live patch. So that's pretty much what we get. So up to date on a lot of the software, a lot of what you might consider your normie software pre-installed out of the box. Easy to install. You have to choose your desktop environment, and then you're pretty much locked into that setup unless you go in here and start changing the desktop around, which it's Linux. It's easy enough to do that. So there is Ubuntu Desktop Pack. Now we'll go ahead and have a look at Zorin. All right, so here is Zorin. Their loading screen, of course. The Zorin jumped on in there. I started the video slightly too late to see the Zorin jump on there. But this guy here, from start to finish, from boot up to shutdown, it themes everything all nicely. So you don't get the background Linuxy looking text on the screen that you might get in some other computer systems. So that's the case there. Here is our login screen. We can go ahead and, again, here you can go with desktop or desktop on Wayland. So when you see this like this with on Wayland, it means that our basic one's running X11 and our other ones can be running Wayland. Wayland might run better in some instances, but here on a virtual machine, X11 works way better and way snappier. So I always default to that if we have the option. Now, when we get logged in here, we are going to get a desktop. You can see it loads a lot faster. And the theming here just is kind of out of the box basic theming. We have a software. I didn't show the software installer. They are very similar. They both are going to support your snap packages. They are both going to show you the snaps and the non-snap versions inside of here. They're pretty much running the same software package. This one I think's probably the GNOME Software Center, and the Ubuntu one's probably the Snap Store, but they're going to be very similar, just slight differences here and there. All right, now where you get one area of extra theming here is if you get the Zorin appearance, you have the option to simply select your theming and your styling out of the box. You can turn on your your icons, excuse me, there. They stack up on top of each other for some reason, but you can turn those on or off there from the desktop. You can choose between a light theme, a dark theme, or one that is transitional, which you can do sunset to sunrise. Now, this one here was something I brought up in a video once, and they clarified if you click on this guy here, it's going to want your location services. This is just to track your time zone and determine when sunset and sunrise is. So if you're not really digging that and you don't want to turn something like that on, there's really no data is being collected. It just is required for a local system. But if you want to turn that on, you can do that, or you can go to the manual and you can set when is sunset, when is sunrise, and the computer will automatically shift between light and dark. You can also easily choose your highlight colors. So if you want to do a basic theming, you have the options to do that right inside of here. I think this is a really nice feature. All right, so we have our fonts, we have our panel setup. You can put it on the top, you can put it on the bottom if that panel is a little bit too big for you. I like my panel a little bit smaller personally, so you can easily adjust that. You can set dynamic opacity, or you can turn it off. You can show various buttons or show desktop button down there. So the desktop button shows you showing the desktop. It's like Windows does, and then this is the showing the activity buttons there. So kind of see what's active. All right. I'm sorry, the activities buttons, this one. All right. So you also, though, have the option of choosing a layout option. So this is the one I'm generally more inclined to like. I like seeing my list of what's open down here at the bottom. This is what my menu looks like here. You actually have a more Mac type option, not pure Mac, but a little bit closer to Mac type option there. So you have a variety of options there for your basic theming. As far as other software, the system here is going to be somewhat similar, a little bit less software on this one, because while it's geared towards new users, they don't want to overwhelm you with too much software. We do have some games, just not as many as we had in the Ubuntu desktop pack. We do have GIMP. We don't have Inkscape. We have just enough tools here to get your work done. Notice that we don't have a messenger. We don't have an email application, at least. Oh, is Remna email? I don't even know what Remna is. Remote desktop client. I got to play with that sometime. I don't do a lot with remote desktop clients. So we don't have email, at least not there, unless it's under Office. Sometimes they're under Office. We don't have a torrent application. Okay, we have Evolution for email. Oh, I love it. Evolution, this is my favorite email client. It's just like the old Outlook, old style Outlook. That's why I like it. It's my preference. We do have LibreOffice. Let's check the version of that one. Sound and video. We have Bersario Cheese TV for video editing. Wow, that actually loaded so fast. I didn't get a chance to see what version it was. What version was that? Anybody catch that? All right, let's go ahead and have a look. So 6.4. So if you want the absolute latest LibreOffice, the Ubuntu desktop pack has the newer version. But you can actually install the newer version on any Ubuntu system as well. The options are out there. So that's pretty much what we have. As far as our settings panel is going to be different in this as was in the Ubuntu version we looked at, but this is going to change with desktop environments. So here's our basic appearances. This is where we change our wallpapers, notifications, online accounts. Both of them are going to support the basically the same online accounts. Here you can turn location services on and off, purging things, connectivity checking, things like that. Here is sharing, sound power, and that's about what we get. So as far as the two, they are both very user-friendly. Zorin is going to give you more options for your theming. Ubuntu Desktop Pack is going to give you more options for your software. So there is two user-friendly, easy to install, easy to use, out-of-the-box Linux distributions. Which one is the best? Well, I'm not really sure I can declare exactly which one's the best of these two. So breaking down their basic features in summary, Zorin is a single download between the standard full core and the light version. The standard core gives you a variety of different layout options for your desktop, but it's all pretty much running the same thing. We have better accent themings, making the theming more consistent with modern computing on a Windows and on a Mac than most of the versions that we're going to find in Ubuntu. Less software overall. Overall, I kind of like some of the approaches that Zorin takes in some respects. As far as the Ubuntu desktop pack, you have an infinite amount more of desktop environments, although you have to choose them all separately. So if you do not know which desktop environment you want to run, you might have to download a lot of different Linux images and explore and experiment with different desktop environments. You also have a lot more software. That is excellent if you are new to Linux and want to see what Linux has to offer, but it's bad if you already know what software you want to run, because you'll find yourself uninstalling a lot of things after the first install, and then you're going to feel like it's back into those old bloated systems where you used to bring your computer home and then spend the next 15 hours uninstalling bloatware software that you never want on your system. So those are kind of my breakdowns. Neither one's absolutely superior over the other. They're both going to be good. They're both going to be stable. They're both going to be user-friendly. And if there are issues, both of these have excellent communities behind them that can help you resolve your issues. So there's my thoughts on these two distros on today's DistroWars. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.